copy of this is in the back of each agenda, posted outside this meeting room and on our website. The New Hampshire State primary election will be held on Tuesday, September 8th, 2026, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the gymnasium at the Prospect Mountain High School, 242 Suncook Valley Road. Absentee ballots are now available from the clerk's office, the town clerk's office, for eligible voters who wish to vote absentee. Please note that the town clerk tax collector's office will remain open during normal business hours on election day. The staff members in the office will only be able to assist residents with motor vehicle transactions, property tax transactions, and vital records. Public hearing acceptance of funds interlocal trust at 6:03, and I believe it is 6:03 now. The purpose of this public hearing is per RSA 31:95B2(4) to receive public input in order to accept funds returned by the New Hampshire Interlocal Trust Incorporated funds.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So we received a check from the New Hampshire Interlocal Trust. If you recall, a little while back, the New Hampshire Interlocal Trust was the health insurance pool that we belonged to, and they had financial problems and collapsed, forcing us and many other communities to seek health insurance through different providers. We were fortunate to get hooked back up with Anthem. What this represents is the money that was left in the pool between the communities for anticipated claims that needed to be paid out, because the interlocal trust obviously had to pay out the remaining claims after things had shut down. Now that that time period is ended and all the claims have been dealt with, this is monies that were left over for the pool and being dispersed back to communities as a reimbursement. So this is one of more checks that we anticipate. We anticipate at least another one, if not two more. This check is for $13,251 that we are looking to accept these unanticipated funds tonight during this public hearing.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Do we need a motion?
We can make a motion, yeah.
Well, we would just open
Any
up, see if
discussion?
there's
We'll
any
open it up and
discussion,
see if there's
but,
any
yeah.
discussion from the public on accepting this $13,251.
Where's the money going to be put?
General fund.
Yep. Okay. No more questions? We'll close to the public input, and I'll make a motion to accept the $13,251 from the interlocal trust to go into the general fund for Alton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So now we'll go right in. We have no new business this evening. We're going right into old business, New Hampshire Alton Power Dam discussion, the drawdown. Gentlemen, please come up.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board, for having me here tonight.
Could you please state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Corey Clark, Chief Engineer at the Dam Bureau at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And so we're here tonight to discuss the postponed drawdown. I was before this board in the springtime to discuss the temporary drawdown, or basically the lowering of 2.5 feet of Wentworth Pond behind Alton Power Dam this to help continue with data collection, get some passive restoration, and provide for additional storm discharge capacity at the site. A couple of issues came up this spring. One of the issues being sediment testing. We did sediment testing last fall, and then we wanted to do additional sediment testing, but given the ice conditions and also given the timing of that drawdown, we really needed to postpone the drawdown in order to collect those sediments efficiently. The second thing was also we became aware of concerns about the downstream drinking water wells for the waterworks, basically those 2 gravel pack wells down by the baseball field. And so we wanted to come up with a scheme of which we could actually see if those wells are truly going to be impacted by if the dam is removed or even just drawing down the impoundment. So what's been happening since I met with you and then ultimately postponed the drawdown is not only have we been collecting additional sediment sampling that is at the laboratory now being reviewed, but also we've done additional wetland and wildlife studies. That report is under review that we received at the end of July. And then the other thing is currently we've been working, and I thank you for the water superintendent and her staff for working with us, but we were able to get 3 wells down, 2 wells by the 2 production wells monitored. So the data is currently being collected down there. There's another well by Public Works before you go across the river. That well has also been instrumented, so that's being monitored as well. And then we also have a data logger at the site as well. So we'll be able to collect data basically this summertime. We're getting baseline data. We're continuing to work with the water and superintendent and her staff as far as when those pumps come on, when the pumps come off, trying to really get a baseline data set so that when we draw the pond down, we can see if there are really any impacts. And so that drawdown is going to occur starting on September 2nd. That drawdown is going to be a little bit different than what we proposed this spring. So what we proposed this spring was we were going to be removing the stop logs. There's 2.5 feet of stop logs across the top of that spillway. We were going to be removing those and basically keeping the pond at that elevation. The difference this fall, in order to really find out what's going to happen with the drinking water wells, is we are going to be completely lowering the impoundment. So what is going to be happening is we will be removing the stop logs to start with, and then we will be opening the low-level gate after that to bring the impoundment down completely. It will probably be somewhere around 12 feet down from its current water surface at the dam. That will translate upstream a little differently, given natural constrictions that are probably up by the Route 40 bridge and further upstream. But we'll keep it down at that level for probably 1 to 2 weeks until things settle out, and we can really collect some good data in those monitoring wells to see if there really is an impact to the drinking water supply and other impacts as well, such as it's my understanding that there could be a water line that's directly buried on the impoundment bottom up by 140. It'd be good to understand, is that really truly there, or is it actually lower below the impoundment surface? So that's another point that we're also going to be looking at. We're going to be surveying a number of different areas, starting from the dam all the way up to Route 28 to figure out what's going to happen to the marsh and the river system as a result of lowering the impoundment completely. So we're going to be doing pre and post surveys at those locations as well. After that 2-week period, and basically when things kind of settle out, then we will be closing that gate, bringing the pond back up this fall, and allowing it to settle out at that 2.5-foot drawdown location. So the stop logs will remain removed, once again, to provide some of the passive restoration along the riverbanks, but also provide the stormwater discharge capacity, and we'll be keeping that for the foreseeable future until either the dam is ultimately removed or the dam is ultimately rehabbed or something other. So that's what is going to happen this fall. Once again, that will start Wednesday, September 2nd. Probably there'll be noticeable impacts as far as drawing that impoundment down throughout September and into October, with things kind of settling back out in October into November. Certainly bringing the pond back up, that will be contingent on natural runoff, and while we are still somewhat in a drought situation, we're kind of on the line here. Certainly additional rainfall this fall will help fill the impoundment back up to that 2.5-foot drawdown level. So that's all I have to present, but I can certainly answer any questions on that. Once again, still in the data collection phase, and my intention is after we do this, then probably come back to the board towards the end of the year and really try to present some of our findings at that time. One of the things I failed to mention was at the end of this calendar year, our contract with our consultant expires and our funding is also expired at that time. And so after the end of this year, it'll probably be a little bit of a delay until we can get some capital appropriation money through the state legislature for continuing additional studies and design and ultimately going to construction. In June, I presented to the Capital Budget Committee a request for $750,000 to continue to the design and ultimately basically get a shovel-ready project, not only for Alton Power, but also for Jones too. So that's $750,000 combined. There was also another ask in there for $750,000 to finish the Mary Meeting dam design, and one other item that Alton may be interested in is also $7 million to actually eventually reconstruct the gates at Lakeport Dam, along with replacing the measuring flume that we have down there that measures all the velocities coming out of Lake Winnipesaukee. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
One of the things you mentioned just now was that you were testing back up to 28. There's going to be a huge amount of impact all the way back to Route 11 in New Durham and beyond. Is your testing scope only back to Route 28?
So the testing scope as far as sediment testing, we've been looking at really kind of 28 and moving down, primarily because once you get upriver from 28, the gradient is actually different such that the water that's being impounded by Alton, that water isn't being impacted upstream of 28. Now, if we see something different during this drawdown, that will be another area that we need to look even further into. And so we don't believe there's any impacts upstream of 28, but there certainly could be, and that's what this drawdown will help answer.
And with the drawdown starting on September 2nd, how long do you anticipate it taking to get down the full 12 feet to the bottom of the impoundment?
It will likely take at least a week or two. So
There's going to
be probably a week or two impacts of drawdown, followed by a week or two of keeping it at that level. So like I said, really all of September is probably going to be impacted into October. And the reason for that is Fish and Game really likes to try to limit the drawdowns to no more than 6 inches or a foot per day. And so we want to really try to make sure we're not drawing things down too fast, and that we're sticking within those guidelines.
You said you had some sediment testing that's been done, but you're still waiting on the results?
So we have some of the results from the preliminary testing that was done. There are some low-level contaminants, both upstream and downstream of the site. One of the issues that we came up was there was some high metal concentrations downstream of the dam, between the dam and Public Works. And so we're sampling more, not only in those locations, but we're also sampling down in Alton Bay. And we have a sampling location basically where the old railroad trestle was, and then another sampling location downstream of the drinking water wells, now that we know about those. So there is some low levels contamination, nothing uncommon for industrial areas of New Hampshire, given what was occurring upstream in Powder Mill and other areas. So we're continuing to dive into that, but ultimately that will be part of the decision-making process. If the levels are too high, then therefore sediment has to be removed. That raises up the cost, and then you start looking at, well, if the cost for removal starts to exceed the cost of reconstruction, then ultimately reconstruction might be a better option.
Right, but you don't have all the data back yet, and you're scheduled to start this work in a few weeks.
I reached out to the consultant today, and they said it's actually under internal review right now, and so they'll have the data back to us before we start the drawdown.
And is that data available to the public?
I can certainly provide it to the board once we get that back. It'll be in draft form because we won't have time to fully review it, but we can certainly provide that data to the board.
Yeah, I think it would be right that the board has an opportunity to review it, and
Sure.
I think it's a shame that we won't have time to react, as you state. I think that doesn't seem very reasonable to me. What are your plans for doing the testing during the drawdown?
So during the drawdown, like I mentioned this spring, we'll be keeping an eye on not only turbidity moving through, but also if there's any significant rainfall events, about slowing down the drawdown so that basically we're not exceeding any flows that would create turbulence within the impoundment. And so it's really going to be a daily check between DES staff and Fish and Game staff throughout the drawdown process.
So you will be conducting sediment tests, turbidity testing during the drawdown period, and hopefully you can manage to get results faster than currently it appears that you're able to get them, because it seems to me that if this drawdown period is 1 to 2 weeks, and it takes you a couple of weeks to get results, well, that's too bloody late.
No, that's correct. And so that's why we're going to look at the data as we come in. But during the drawdown, we really are, it's really going to be a not only weather-based analysis, but also a visual-based analysis, really seeing what's happening in the water and the turbidity column. Because you're correct. Simply grabbing a sample today and getting it turned around, you just don't have the time. By the time you get that sample back, that water's already down into Alton Bay.
Do you foresee any negative impacts on the bay and the lake from the drawdown?
Not from the drawdown, no.
You don't anticipate any sediment flow
Or
as the drawdown
contaminants.
occurs?
Contaminants of any kind.
Contaminants being washed into the Bay Area?
No.
And you'll have monitors in place to ensure that should that start, you will stop your drawdown
Yeah,
process?
yeah. If it appears that that is starting to occur, we will be stopping the drawdown.
What is the process of monitoring? This is going to be a daily basis? You'll be there every day as the drawdown is
Yeah,
being
we-
continued?
staff-
And you'll be,
Yeah, staff will be on site because not only doing the visual drawdown, but also removing those stop logs so that we can continue to do this drawdown efficiently. So we certainly don't want to have the impacts be there over a prolonged period of time. And so we will be keeping an eye on everything, on a daily basis.
and what do you expect the marine life effect will be?
Based on other projects and based on consultation with Fish and Game, it'll be minimal, especially if we not only limit the drawdown period, but also make sure that the impoundment is being refilled prior to the cold weather set in time. It's really the aquatic species that live in the organics and making sure that they have adequate time to either move to a lower elevation prior to freezing temperatures coming in, or basically making sure they're covered in water before those freezing temperatures set in.
Just out of curiosity, what made you decide to do a full drawdown? Because, I mean, really, when the news of that came through, it surprised everybody.
It was really based on the concerns from based on the concerns of the drinking water supply. Because regardless, even if this dam gets reconstructed, the pond is still going to be drawn down during that time period. It was drawn down in 1986 and 1987 for about a period of 2.5 years when the dam was reconstructed at that time. And so, but we don't have any data in that one of the wells was installed since that time. And so this is really just trying to gather what is going to occur at those wells as a result of this, whether it's removed or whether it's being reconstructed.
So you plan on working with the water department as the drawdown comes down to continue to look at
Yep,
where the water lines are and what the concerns are?
Exactly.
As this is the process.
yep,
And all the water department wells are downstream of the dam, correct?
correct.
Do we have any monitors upstream of the dam? That impoundment being much lower, I'd be worried about people's wells
Yeah,
being
private
affected
wells.
by
Private
that
wells,
water being
yes.
lowered.
There is no, as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any monitoring wells upstream.
Well, wouldn't it be incumbent on the state to ensure that they're not going to affect public water supply via lowering impoundments and therefore allowing less water to soak into the ground?
Certainly, I mean, for the impoundment of this size, generally we find that if someone has a drilled artesian well, it doesn't affect that deeper aquifer. That aquifer is built down into the bedrock and deeper. Now, if it's a dug well, there could be impacts. And there have been people from the public who have reached out to me on those potential impacts. And really, once again, if there was a dug well, it would have to be a relatively new dug well. This pond was drained in a similar manner in the late 1980s. And so, yes, that was about 40 years ago. But I would assume that those homes had impacts then and either had to put in a new artesian well at that time or either tie into a neighbor's or even tie into the municipal water supply. Now, given that this is a short duration impact, another data point, it will be able to give us that data point, hey, my well went dry, and this is at the pond elevation that occurred. But without doing this, there's no way to know if there are going to be impacts upstream.
With an area as large as the impoundment behind that dam, there won't be any expected effect in the water that leaches into the aquifer. You know, you're talking a surface water area that's vast and it's going to become a 6 to 10 foot stream. So I find it hard to believe that that won't affect the rate at which water is soaked into the ground and leaches all the way down to the aquifer to replenish.
Yeah, even upstream of all, one of the data points that we were able to gather based on bathymetry and survey that happened this spring and last year was that really, even though about a 12-foot drawdown at the dam itself, upstream of 140, we're looking at only about a 4.5-foot drawdown because there's a constriction there, basically 140 being the constriction. And then even further upstream, about 500 feet upstream of that, there appears to be another natural constriction based on the photographs from the 1980s drawdown. So once you get further up into the marsh, it's only going to be, we assume, only going to be a couple of feet, if that, drawdown. Now, we won't know until we actually do the drawdown, but that's our expectations.
Is it safe to say that if the funds were available, are there any negatives to completely reconstructing the dam so it meets that 1,000-year storm? Any downside to that other than the cost?
Really, yeah, it's just a cost game, and unfortunately, given the number of dams that the state owns and the number of high hazard dams the state owns, the funding just isn't sufficient to repair all of those structures. And so that is where we are taking a more diligent approach on repairing some, removing others, and really trying to reduce not only the financial risk to the state, but also the risk of property damage and life loss because these dams are not in compliance.
I'm sure you've received, your department as well as Fish and Game, concerned citizens who abut the river in the area. And I'm sure there's been a lot of concerns with property values and actual impact of the drawdown would be. How do you address that?
So as far as property values go, that is a conversation between the individual and the town itself. We don't get involved in property values. But as far as the river being there or not being there, the river is still always going to be there, even after the pond goes away. It won't be an open body of water, but it will still be a natural stream moving through the area. So not only will there still be a water course moving through, but also a lot of those property owners, they actually own the land under the water. So I've had conversations with property owners up in New Durham about the Jones removal, is that the state has flowage rights on those property owners, but we don't own the land underneath. And so a lot of times what we find is that as the water goes down, basically their deeds are written such that they own to the high water mark. Well, when that high water mark changes, now there's more uplands for them to actually use and benefit from that are theirs by deed, but are currently underwater. So it is a complex conversation when it gets into what happens to individuals' property when these things occur.
Are you aware of any past cases where this type of exercise has resulted in someone or some group bringing suit on the grounds that the loss of the visible lake effect on their property values is something they want to recover damages from the state for?
I'm not aware of anything in recent times as far as that goes, as far as a individual property suit brought upon the state. Yeah, I don't know of anything recently, and then also thinking back in prior times, there's certainly been plenty of lawsuits dealing with water rights specifically, and who has water rights and who does not have water rights. But something of that case, I'm not aware of.
So one of the things that you said that I guess is kind of sticking in my head, is that the testing is not complete, so we haven't, you haven't done full comprehensive analysis of all the potential impacts. That I feel like this is more of a test run here to see what happens, and we'll react accordingly. But the other thing is that you mentioned that the funding is gone at the end of the year, and I feel like we're being rushed through so that you can spend the money while you got it and not line up for next year's funding and fight for it at that time. Without all the proper information, it seems like you're just rushing headstrong into this thing without having all the facts in place yet. And I think that that's not right for this town.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and it's not. I'm sorry it appears that way, but unfortunately, that is somewhat the case, is that the funding that we have, American Rescue Plan Act funding, has to be spent and everything has to be invoiced by the end of September. So that is somewhat correct that we are trying to get this done. Otherwise, we may have to wait several more years until we get an answer on this. And my concern is that this dam, being as deficient as it actually is that an event does happen in which something catastrophically happens and downstream along Letter S Road and downstream through Alton Bay gets impacted. That's my biggest concern. That's the reason that we're doing all of this work. And so, but I will say, when the data comes in, it's going to be reviewed by not only the consultant that we have working for us, but also the experts that we have in NHDES along through the waste program and others that review toxicology results and everything else. And if there is a red flag in there that do not open that low-level gate because of a concern that could happen, then we won't open the low-level gate. My concern with the low-level gate is it is a wooden gate that's 40 years old. So at some point in time, we will have to do something out there to address that. But if there is something that rises to the level of that kind of concern, we won't draw it all the way down.
But we won't know necessarily because of the slow response in getting test results and having them reviewed and then released.
Well, we will know what's in the sediment, so we will know what's there to begin with, and we'll know if it's able to become mobile or not. What is actually in the water column while it's being released, we won't know that until it's actually being released.
Which is all the more reason why, if you're going to go through with this, it should be a very slow and methodical process rather than a week to 10 days or 2 weeks.
It does seem like it's being rushed.
The superintendent wanted to include something.
Yeah.
Do we have, we may have a comment from the water department? I don't see why not from, because it's one of the water department, and come on up.
It's relative to the statement. With all due respect.
Could you just
Yeah,
introduce yourself?
Courtney Mitchell, Water Superintendent. On the basis of, is this on?
Yes, just bring it up.
On the basis of this being a rushed project, from being someone that deals with infrastructure and failing infrastructure, and missing opportunities for funding. You're looking at the first person in line who has missed many opportunities for funding. The fact of the matter is that we all need to keep up with our infrastructure. Clearly, the state has dropped the ball. Because you didn't put the money into things that were failing, that doesn't constitute that everyone here in this room needs to jump and now do something because your money's running out. For instance, I just missed out on grant funding for a tank because we didn't have the money to go further with it. That is the state's job to keep up with their infrastructure as much as it's mine to keep up with mine. So to push this through because you're running out of money is a sad response and an excuse. I have to do testing before I put new wells in. I have to do source exploration for anything that I want to do further. And you guys need to go through the checks and balances to make sure that that works for everyone. To wait on test results, but still move forward with something is not something that I'm allowed to do. and you shouldn't be either. So all of the research needs to be done. It needs to be evaluated with the correct amount of time for people to review it, and then execute the task if that works. But what you're saying here goes against everything that everyone else is supposed to follow, and I think it's inappropriate.
Thank you, Courtney, and again, that was our water superintendent for the town of Alton, so that was important.
So just on the sediment testing, we will have those results by the end of this week or next week. And then then we have 3 weeks to review that and before we even start the drawdown process.
And I've also heard several mentions of the deficiency of this dam. And I don't follow that logic, as this dam has been through a couple of major events on its own without failing, without water going over the Water S Road. You guys are talking about a 1,000-year storm. How many acres was the pond that the dam ruptured and washed all that water down through the dam all at once? And the dam didn't breach, didn't erode, water didn't go over the Water S Road. So whatever metrics or standards you're using to define this 1,000-year storm don't seem possible when you look at an event like that.
Which goes, what process did you use to go through the state after you realized that the funding was not there and you had to make cutbacks? What process do you use to pick which town and which bridge, dam needed to be removed? Was it a process of the condition of each one, or was it more that it was just something that you needed to do and X amount of dams that had to be removed? Say we need to remove 10 dams. Let's just go at it. How did that process go through?
So before we start any dam rehabilitation process, we always look at removal as one of the options. We're required to do that whether we're working on a flood control dam down in Sauhegan's or Baker River Valley or elsewhere in the state. Is we look at, can we go along with the do nothing approach? Can we go along with rehabilitation? Can we lower the impoundment to get past the storm that's necessary out there, or can we go with removal? And so when we weigh those factors, we look at other things like what is the economic benefits of that water body, not only from the properties around but also businesses, as well as is it a great pond? Is it in the public trust? We look at a number of different parameters such as that. And really, then we narrow it down into a river by river system. And so when you look at the Merrymeeting River with 3 high hazard dams, each dam, if it was going to be fully rehabilitated, would probably be on the order of $10 million a piece. That's a $30 million bill. And when you look at removing it, that number could possibly drop down to $5 million. It may be more than that. We don't know yet. And so one of the things is really breaking down the financials of it, but also looking at the risk. And to answer your question earlier, just about storms, I agree. A 1,000-year storm event, this area probably has never seen one like that, and hopefully it never does. But when I was sitting down with my staff on July 28th, 29th of this past month, there was a storm event that was rolling in, coming through down Massachusetts, and we were supposed to get pretty significant rainfall, in the order of about 4 inches around here. Not significant for us, but not that much. However, that storm decided to track more toward the Hudson Valley, and outside of Albany, some of the suburbs around Albany received over 11 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The 1,000-year event here is 10.9 inches, 11 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. Had that storm decided not to sit over the Albany area in the Hudson Valley, it would have tracked somewhere else. And so it does seem, and I'll just say also, that was the largest storm event Albany has ever seen since records were started in 1874. So I agree, it's a very big event. It's very hard to wrap your head around, but it can happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it certainly could in this area. And so that is what we have to design for, and that's the design standard because of those people living downstream of this dam. If there weren't businesses and residents living downstream, that 1,000-year event wouldn't be the threshold. It would be something more in the order of the 100-year or 50-year for a low hazard dam. We wouldn't be here having this conversation because the dam would be able to pass those events. Well, maybe not quite the 100-year, but certainly the 50-year. And so that's part of the criteria that goes into the analysis.
Looking at the watershed, do you have any figures that represent how much water would be going over the dam with their 1,000-year storm?
So the 1,000-year storm event, I believe it is about 1.8 feet for 56 hours during a storm event of that magnitude. And so a lot of that water does go over the side on Letter S Road and takes out Letter S Road.
Based on a computer model,
Correct.
no actual hydro flow or any other stoppages that are limiting that flow to get to the dam because it's in a watershed.
Oh.
So all that water goes there, it takes time to get there.
Sure, and we do look at all those parameters. So it all starts up at Merry Meeting Lake. We look at the volume of water at that storm event coming out of Merry Meeting Lake. Then we look at that volume of water coming through Jones, Downings Pond, and then there's actually a flow split that happens by Route 11. So at a storm event of that magnitude, there's actually a volume of water that goes over to the Cachico River Valley and actually bypasses this area. Because one thing we found, and we've been studying Alton Power Dam since about 2014, and the initial runs that we were seeing was upwards of 3 to 4 feet of overtopping. That didn't seem realistic. And so as we dug into it more, and as the state gathered more topography data through their LIDAR work that they've done, we were able to determine, well, in reality, a lot of that water would actually head down the Cachico area, or some of it would, as it moves across Route 11. And so that's where we were able to reduce that number from 3 to 4 feet down to 1.8. So, because ultimately, if you have that volume of water at 3 to 4 feet, you can never, even if you wanted to reconstruct the dam, it's nearly impossible. 1.8 feet, it's still certainly a very big challenge and a very big project, but it could be done.
Thank you.
One of the things that we briefly explored was the possibility of the town taking ownership of the dam.
I was gonna just bring that up.
And the two biggest objections that I recall, one was if you were to do that, the town would have to pay whatever the current appraised value of the dam was. And the other was the town would be on the hook for bringing the dam up to standard. And my question is, at the time, and I don't know how you figure this out, but who decides what the appraised value is, and it is in fact negative because the dam's in trouble? And also, if the town is obligated to repair the dam because they own it, what's the enforcement mechanism that would force that?
So to answer your first question, yeah, it is an independent appraisal that happens through the state surplus land process. A fair market value would have to be determined. That value could certainly be zero, but that's part of the way the law is written. Goes through several different committees, and then ultimately through governor and council for approval as part of that transaction. And so that was your first question. And your second question was,
If we were to assume ownership,
yes.
then the next objection was, well, now you're on the hook to repair an unsafe dam. And I just wondered what the enforcement mechanism was to force the town to do that.
Sure. So all these requirements that we're discussing, the 1,000-year event for high hazard dams, so on and so forth, that applies to all high hazard dams, whether they're state owned, municipally owned, or privately owned. And so there's private dam owners that have a high hazard dam, and they're trying to figure out the same criteria. Those rules that drive that are through the administrative rules that are overseen by the Dam Safety Section of the Dam Bureau. So the Dam Safety Section is responsible for all the inspections, permitting, and enforcement actions on all dams in the state, except for hydro dams, which are regulated by FERC. And so regardless of ownership, that would still be the enforcement mechanism, is that the dam would still transfer, but those regulations don't go away. So, just because the state owns the site, it's not exempt. Same if a municipality owns the site, it's not exempt as well. And there certainly are plenty of municipalities in the state that own high hazard dams.
Have you seen examples of, I would assume it would be some kind of a monetary penalty or actually performance demand that the dam be fixed, or?
So, yes, if a dam is truly deficient and it's So this dam is classified as being in poor condition. So you have fair, satisfactory, poor, and unsatisfactory. Basically, a dam in poor condition is one that doesn't meet a loading criteria. And so in this case, it actually doesn't meet a couple of loading criterias, not only the storm discharge, but also the spillway we have found through our investigations doesn't sit on bedrock, or likely doesn't sit on bedrock. It just sits on soil. So if you have a storm event of that magnitude, basically that spillway can shift and result in a dam failure. And so then we have dams that are unsatisfactory. So if this dam, now you can go out there today and it's not imminently falling apart. However, if a dam moves into that phase, so say a big sinkhole opens up on one side of the dam or something like that, and it's imminent failure, well then certainly it drops into the unsatisfactory criteria. And at that point in time, the dam has to be drained, no questions asked. And so fortunately, the state doesn't have any unsatisfactory criteria, and we're trying to do what we can to make sure we don't have any in that criteria. And so once the dam reaches that unsatisfactory criteria, typically that's when the Attorney General's office gets involved, because enforcement actions really do have to take place. I have no examples of that taking place against any municipalities.
And if these ARPA funds were not available, what would your situation be?
The situation is we probably wouldn't even have gotten any farther. We wouldn't be where we are today. I wouldn't have been able to do the studies that we've done, the sediment sampling and other things to get to where we are today. It would have been, unfortunately, probably continuing to compete with Lakeport and other sites throughout the state, everywhere from Pittsburgh all the way down to Pawtuckaway and all the way over to the Keene area. And it would have just been the way it is, and we're hoping that we don't get that 1,000-year event while we're trying to use the limited state funds that we get to address other sites. Fortunately, with the ARPA funds, we had the opportunity to not only look at this dam, but look at all 3 dams. Really dive into answering the question, does it really overtop by 3 to 4 feet? And then also to answer the questions of, are these dams stable? Are they not stable? And in order to improve everything on this river system, what would it take?
Are there federal monies available?
So federal monies, the only federal money that is available currently that I'm aware of definitively for high hazard dams in poor condition is through the FEMA High Hazard Dam grant program. I will say the 2026 notice of funding opportunity came out, and I believe it's $11.4 million for the entire country. So when you have a project that's cost $10 million, that funding isn't going to get there. In fact, we've used that funding before, but typically it's always for design purposes, and we've actually not used it for construction. I will say that Pawtuckaway Lake, those 4 dams over there, we estimate that that project's going to be about $20.1 million. We are trying to do something a little unique and actually go through resiliency grant processes. As far as I'm aware, nobody else in the country has ever gone after this FEMA resilient brick money. Alton may have used brick money in some form or fashion for some stormwater things in the past, but I don't think anybody's used it for a dam rehabilitation project. And so we are trying to see if we can secure that money, because at that point in time, it's a 25-75 split, and so we just have to fund the $5.25 million in order to actually get that project off the ground. I will say that Pawtuckaway Lake, and the condition that the main dam is down there, is in much, much worse condition than Alton Power. And so that is certainly a higher priority project. Same with the gates at Lakeport, honestly. And so that's where if we don't get the funding through the capital appropriation budget, then then we'll be focusing on other projects. And this will just, unfortunately, probably languish until we can get funding to get it done.
And you only applied for a grant for Pawtuckaway, you didn't bother with any of these other dams that are in question?
They needed to have, they needed to be further along in the design process. And so Pawtuckaway, in fact, we probably will be denied on the Pawtuckaway one. We're still hoping that that denial letter will allow us to secure the match funding so that we can get it done next year, because the process isn't far enough along. I will say we have another $7 million project at Murphy Dam up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. That project is actually out to bid. We did apply for BRIC grant funding for that project. That project is about as far along as you can get. So that will give us some insight, if we get the money at least for that project, to see how we can use these BRIC grants down the road.
Another question I have is with this drawdown of the impoundment, there are around various places all the way back through New Durham, there are dry hydrants where in the event of a fire departments can go and hook up. With this drawdown, those won't be sucking water. So is there any fallback plan for fire departments to cover that water that is normally there to save lives?
So during a drawdown process, typically no, there's not, other than the town taking it upon themselves, either setting up a pump or setting up a cistern or setting up another means to do it. However, if there are impacts, say the dam is removed and these dry hydrants are there and they need to be addressed. Like right now, we're working on removal of Hadley Falls Dam in downtown Goffstown. They have 2 dry hydrants down there as part of there. So we're proposing to tie into the water main that runs through their Main Street system to basically supplement with hydrants in that case. And so that is part of a big removal process, and that will be done. And so this, not knowing the impacts at this juncture, we don't know what will happen, but if there are impacts further down the road, the state could address those. Now, if it becomes an issue in which, for whatever reason, there's not a dry hydrant there, or there was a dam removal over in Swansea in which the town of Swansea put in a cistern right next to where the dry hydrant was in the river complex. If that can't be done, then we'll have to look at other options. But there has been work on other removal projects to address that.
Down beyond 28, I don't know, is there any water that goes out that way? Municipal water? Or 28 towards, stops at the hotel. So there would be no alternate options for water. Once that's drawn down, they would either need something that went all the way to the river and hope there's enough flow in the river, or there would just be no longer that fire protection for all the houses in the area. That seems like a not good option.
With the
Very
burden
high
being
risk.
placed on the town to resolve
Yes.
that problem. That's what you're saying. I guess, I'm sorry.
Well,
that was a question.
I'm not aware of it. I mean, if the town had water rights to those dry hydrants for pulling the water out of the river system, then the town has rights to that water. But I'm not aware of any municipalities that have dry hydrants that have water rights to that water. Now, the state can do what we can to address that, but once again, because I have to go in front of the Capital Appropriations Budget Committee for dealing with state infrastructure. When you start talking about town infrastructure, it becomes a different story. And trying to wrap the town infrastructure when they may or may not even have rights to the water to begin with becomes an interesting conversation when state dollars are being spent on these other projects. Because there's plenty of towns out there who would like to get an additional dry hydrant here or dry hydrant there. So that's the challenge that I have, is trying to wrap these into part of the project moving forward. Now, if there are rights to that water, then that is a right that is granted to the municipality or to whomever. That's an issue that's down at going on down at Canopy Lake between a couple of municipalities down there. But so certainly, if you're aware of any water rights with any of these, or the wells or anything like that, please let me know.
Prior to this inspection that's led to the poor rating and the intent to remove this dam, when was the most recent inspection? What was the dam rated at that point?
So the dam's been rated poor for several inspections. I'm not sure the most when that change actually occurred. I would suspect when we first realized how much it would overtop, probably in the 2014 timeframe. But the dam gets inspected every 2 years. So all high hazard dams in New Hampshire get inspected by that dam safety program every 2 years, regardless of who owns that dam. So even if ownership transfers, it would still be inspected by the dam safety program every 2 years. And so we certainly have all the records going back on that. And that was part of the issue through those inspections that happened in the late 2000s that ultimately drove us to starting to do the initial modeling to figure out what was actually going on at that site.
The residents of this town, and especially the residents that border this river, they pay a lot of taxes to the state, and they expect their infrastructure to be upkept. So how has the state failed to the point of not inspecting this and maintaining it prior to now, where now the better option is removal, because they can get grants to cover returning it to how it was 100 years ago?
Yeah, as far as the grants to return it to where, as part of removal, I don't know if we'll be able to get grant money for removal either. So,
That's what was brought up at the last meeting, was that the reason that you were pursuing removal is because you can get a lot of grant coverage.
historically, yes, things have changed in as far as the federal grant atmosphere goes. We were historically able to get additional funding for dam removal projects. That funding, in fact, we're waiting for a Fish and Wildlife grant for a removal up in Lancaster that we've been waiting to hear back on since late last year. And so I don't want to promise there's funding available from a federal side just for removal. As far as, like I said earlier, as far as property values and things like that, they may or may not be impacted. At the state, certainly my money comes from about a third of it comes from hydro fees that we get for hydro developments, dam registration fees. So if you own a dam, you have to pay a registration fee, and a couple other sources. But really, that only covers about a third of my cost. The other cost is all state funded, and primarily that comes through the state general fund and capital funds. So that's certainly a mix of all kinds of different funding that comes in, but I don't have any direct link for any property tax evaluations or anything else that come into funding these dams that hold back these bodies of water.
Throughout this conversation, it seems like every time we bring up a different situation, there's another dam reference that's slated for removal. How has the state been so derelict in maintaining all these dams to the point that so many are looking at removal? And how has none of our tax dollars gone to pay for refurbishment? Why is there no money appropriated for the dams?
So going back in time, to start in 1920s, the state of New Hampshire owned no dams. In fact, we did not own these three dams. These three dams were privately owned, partially by the mill companies that owned the dams all through the Winnipesaukee River Basin, and partially through a couple of local entrepreneurs as well. The state of New Hampshire started the Water Resources Board in the 1920s after there was significant flooding, primarily in the Connecticut River Basin in 1927, and then there was also significant floods in 1936 and 1938. So the state of New Hampshire started the Water Resources Board not only to address some of these flooding issues, but also to start addressing some of basically the issue at the time was hydropower was being developed. The state wanted to make sure it maintained that resource. So the state started taking on these sites more and more. The only site that the state really built at that time was Murphy Dam up in Pittsburgh. There was actually slated to be several of the dams of that magnitude throughout the state, but that was the only one constructed. And so what happened in the 1950s and into the 1960s is all these power companies, not unsimilar to what is occurring on the Mary Meeting River, is that these power companies no longer needed these assets. They were no longer generating revenue through hydro. They were no longer an asset for them. And so they turned it over to the state, and at that time, the Water Resources Board was taking on 1, 2, 3 dams in this case for $1 through deed transfers. There was no foresight into how this was all going to be funded. In the 1960s and 1970s, they started realizing we have a lot of liability on our books that we don't have funding for. Fortunately, what happened in the 1980s is with the energy crisis, hydro had a lot of incentives. There was a lot of incentives for developing hydro in the 1980s. That's when Lakeport was developed at the outlet of Winnipesaukee. That's when Lockmere was developed at the outlet of Winnisquam. And numerous dams all throughout the state were developed at that time frame. So the state was then able to lease, I believe, at least over 12 dams, and the revenue generated by those dams covered all of our costs. And so, because at that time they could get power purchase agreements for 20 years and possibly get upwards of like 14, 15 cents a kilowatt hour. What happened in the 2000s is basically they were required to divest of all these assets, and so those with power purchase agreements no longer had those agreements at hand, and they were open to basically the open market. So what happened in the early 2000s is the revenue generated by the hydros fell through the floor. And so that at that point in time, the Dam Bureau had to start relying on capital funds and general funds. And so for the past 30 years, we've been stuck in this rut of dealing with trying to get money through the general fund and capital fund. Additionally, a dam owner has no control over downstream development. So a lot of these dams were initially built as either low hazard dams or things like that. And as soon as a house goes downstream, or multiple houses, that dam is now a high hazard dam. So in 2004, the state had 35 high hazard dams. Now we have 64. It's not because we're building new high hazard dams, it's just because of the downstream development that's occurring out there, and we have no control over that development. And this is not just a state problem, this is all dam owner problems, that they have no control over what happens downstream. And so that is the challenge. And I hope that answers your question as far as some of the funding stuff of where we've gotten, but also how even our current inventory has been becoming more and more challenging to actually maintain. And unfortunately, deferred maintenance is what it is. And it's continuing. And some of the bodies of water, we're at a point now that, you know, I hope we don't have to drain them because we just can't get the projects done. And that's what we're looking at.
I just can't help but feel this whole dam project, the drawdown has been crammed right down our throat and just being pushed really quickly without really considerate thought process in the drawdown itself as far as the sediment and the impact that it's going to have on the local residents on the river. I just think the whole process is going too fast, too quickly. Hurry up, draw it down, and see what happens. That's what it feels like.
Well, we'll
It
know.
feels like doing a drawdown, just gonna do it and see what happens. Maybe we shouldn't have done it. Now we're gonna try to put it back. I just feel as though that this whole process is going too quickly and needs to be thought out a little bit better. And if there's anything we can do to do that, to slow this process down, do a better study, listen to the taxpayers and the tax people, the people that are living, the abutters, what it's going to affect their properties, whether there's going to be a mud pit in front of their house, or whether there's going to be odor, sediment, or anything like that, problems that need to be addressed. And I think we need to slow down before we just say, we're going to start September 2nd, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we will know it's in the sediment by September 2nd. We will know.
Erosion.
Those answers, we can't get those answers simply by looking at the water surface and looking below the water surface.
Have no data from any other drawdown that you've already done?
I have plenty of data of river restoration projects that have happened all throughout the state. And I mean, there's one going on in Durham right now, a removal in downtown Durham. There's other removals that have gone on in the state. There's been removals. Exeter did the Great Dam removal. That's been a very successful restoration project of that river system. Another one over in Dover at the Sawyer Mill Complex on the Bellamy River. That's been a successful restoration. Another one is going on over in Gonick right now at a contaminated site as well. So there are plenty of examples of what happened, and I can certainly come back to the board and present of what happens.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, certainly. And I would encourage the board to talk to these other communities because it's happening all throughout the state, unfortunately. But in some communities, like in the case of Exeter, in Durham, they own those dams, but they didn't want to have that liability. So they chose to remove those dams and restore those river systems. And in those cases, there are contaminated sediments that had to be addressed and removed. But and in the case of Exeter, there was water lines, there was public utilities, there was water intakes that had to be addressed. And so they were certainly there. And so I can certainly come back to the board and present those findings.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do you, when the transfer of title from the power company to the state occurred on the dam that we're concerned with, do you know what the terms were for that transaction?
The terms as far as?
Was it at fair market value or abandoned? Or?
Most of the deeds, I don't know the specific deed, but most of them were $1. Sometimes there was a transfer of, there was some money to the state to either fix the dam, or the state paid more than $1 to fix the dam. But generally, it certainly wasn't enough to create any sort of investments for capital expenses in the future.
And are you confident that if or when the drawdown is completed, it will result in an accurate estimate of repair costs for the dam if a decision is made to repair it?
It will certainly help drive those costs. I mean, these dams, given their age, it's just like an old home. You know, until you open up the walls, you're not quite sure what you're going to get into. You don't know what the prior owners did or anything like that. Being able to remove one wall by drawing down the dam helps answer those questions, but it certainly won't answer everything. We won't know until either going through full construction or full removal of what is actually underneath that spillway. It could be rock. There's no indication that it's rock. We don't believe there's rock there, but that can certainly drive the both design process for repair or the design process for removal. And unfortunately, one thing we have to make sure that we have as part of any of these construction projects is a hefty contingency amount for change orders, because they ultimately will come every time we do one of these projects. We're wrapping up a project over on Mendham's Pond in Barrington right now, another one up at Goose Pond, and a couple other dam projects up in Nass Stream State Forest. And so all of those projects have certainly eaten up the contingency money just because there's so many unknowns associated with these.
If you were to come back with more information, do you have the ability to delay the September 2nd drawdown?
I can delay the September 2nd drawdown. Unfortunately, we won't be able to collect the data on the drinking water wells because that contract expires. And so I won't be able to get the data on what happens to those drinking water wells as a result of the pond being drawn down.
Is that contract renewable or extendable?
It could be renewed and extended. I just don't have the funding right now. So it would ultimately, what would happen is the consultant would pull the instrumentation out of those wells, and I would be left with hopefully doing that again when I get the capital appropriation money. If I was fortunate to get it, that would become available in the summer of 2027.
If you were to limit the drawdown to the 2.5 feet as was initially presented to the board and the public here, wouldn't that give you some data on the effects of the wells downstream?
It could, yeah.
That you could then extrapolate perhaps what the
Yeah.
full drain down impact would be?
Sure. I mean, that's certainly better than nothing. That's certainly better than nothing. The other thing we can try to explore too, and we're having to probably do this over at the Hadley Falls project site, is rather than opening the low-level gate, if the stream flows are low enough, we can bypass with a pump. So if we set up either a couple of 8-inch pumps, we might be able to actually, now you got to have really, really low drought conditions because you actually don't pass that much water at all with a pumping system. But we might be able to actually bypass it and try to get some of that data. But once again, that's an impact to the residents because of the noise of the pumps running and the pumps being refueled and things of that nature. But any bit of data is better than no data, certainly.
Well, certainly just doing the original drawdown of the 2.5 feet, which everyone was aware of. This new drawdown that you were talking, we've only found out not too long ago.
Yep.
I think going back to that way of thinking, and I think that would be a better answer.
Yeah, I'm still frustrated with the concept of drawing it down 2.5 feet and then leaving it there. But drawing it down 2.5 feet for you to get more data and to be able to develop a firmer idea of what the full impact could potentially be, with all of these peripherals that we've talked about here tonight, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't understand why we can't then bring the level back up. I know that at least I believe that from your perspective is you leave it down 2.5 feet, gives an opportunity for some of the growth to come up on the banks, but it still has taken away from the town's beauty, the property values. It seems to me like bring it down 2.5 feet, do all your testing. We can figure out how much sediment is passing at that point as well, the turbidity testing. Bring it back up.
Bring the level back up.
Yeah, the only other benefit I'll say about leaving it down 2.5 feet is it provides that additional capacity during a storm event, and it buys us more time before either getting reconstructed or removed. I mean, that's the same thing we did up at Jones, is the flashboards failed in July of 2023. And because of concerns about that dike and overtopping of that dike along Mary Meeting Road, we've elected to leave those flashboards off. And so they've been off since July of 23. So that pond's been down 2 feet since that time.
Something else that was brought to my attention is there is potentially another water line that will need to be checked from Barnes Ave under to Turtle Corral. That is protected
so.
via the water. So that's something else that will have to be factored into this evaluation.
Is that upstream or downstream?
Upstream between
Upstream.
140 and
Okay.
28.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, I'd just like to say obviously, the townspeople are very frustrated. The board feels like we need to do something to protect the townspeople, and we're limited in terms of options that are open to us. And I personally, I appreciate your coming forward. I know you're just the messenger. This is not your idea. And I have been in your shoes where you present something that is entirely unpopular. And I appreciate your making that effort. And I hope that you will be able to bring us some additional data. And if anything else occurs to you that might help us out, we sure would be happy to hear about it.
Certainly.
Can the state look into, if the state, let's just say that how it happened when it got it from the power companies, that they got it for $1, the cost of replacement will degrade the value of the dam. If the state was to relinquish the dam to us or surrender it to us in lieu of tearing it out and give us the option for the town to vote if they want to raise and appropriate the funds to repair the dam, that might be much more tenable than us having to buy the dam and then also repair it. And nothing, in my opinion. You guys got it for $1.
So the dam is actually owned by Fish and Game.
I
And
understand.
yeah, so I don't want to speak on behalf of Fish and Game. I know that they're evaluating, they're evaluating the pros and cons of long-term ownership scenarios and kind of weighing their options as well. I know from state dam projects that I've worked on that are owned by DES, my agency, we've certainly worked with municipalities to try to see what we can do to make it palatable for both sides. So, don't want to speak for Fish and Game, but if they so choose that that's the course of action, I would imagine that, they'd be able to.
I mean, I would assume it would be money off their books if they didn't have to factor
That's
any
correct.
cost for removal. But something I want to announce so the whole townspeople hear, if that was a path we chose, your taxes are gonna be affected to raise that money to maintain
course.
that. It's not just the abutters of the watershed, it's everyone in town. So keep that in mind.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Anything?
Thank you.
So I would open it to public
Okay,
input.
I think at this time, we thank you. At this time, we're going to open up to public input. So, young lady in the second row, come on up. Come up here, yes, yep. And now, give us your name, your location, address.
Those tables are too close together.
Those tables aren't supposed to be that close
You have to go
together.
back a couple
They're
hundred feet.
supposed to, they keep getting pushed together, they should be separated a little more. Please state your name,
Yeah.
address.
My name is Sandra Esposito, and I live at 53 Pine Street, which is all the way at the end on the river. And I've lived there for 26 years. And they're trying to scare us, okay? Plain and simple. They're trying to scare us, put pressure on Alton. I don't believe a lot of what I heard today. I don't believe a lot of what, government officials say anymore, because I've seen what can happen. 1,000-year flood? I mean, we could have an earthquake. Don't we have a fault line that goes along New England? So what are we gonna do for that? Or what are we gonna do for this if this happens, or that happens, or this? I mean, within reason, you're opening up something that might not be able to go back to its original beauty. I've seen, I tried to oppose the RV park when it went in. I've seen wildlife affected. I've seen, I don't know, it's the 26 years I've lived there, it's changed dramatically. And it's changed dramatically the last few years. And if this happens, of course our property taxes, our property values are going to go down. But that's not the reason that I'm so concerned. I love Alton. It's beautiful. How can you tell people to come here when we're going to be destroying a beautiful river? And yes, what about the fire situation? What about, I'll be living on a mud flat. It might stink. I mean, there's so many negative things that they don't care. The state probably doesn't care. Who really cares except for us that live here? And we shouldn't just let them bulldoze us into decisions. I mean, I think you guys said we're being forced to hurry up. And that's the same thing that happened with the RV park. I'm sorry, but they promised and promised this and that because they wanted to get it done, and nothing that was promised came about. They did whatever they wanted to do. But this is so important for, a lot of people use it for recreation. I mean, there's so much wildlife and beauty there. Just think about what it would do. What would it do if that river wasn't there? Don't let them do it. We have to do whatever we can do. I don't think we're going to have a 1,000-year flood like they're talking about. They are trying to scare us. I'm not afraid of it. I mean, what about 100 years or 50 years? I mean, we've had, somebody mentioned the storms that we've had, like the one recently on 140. It didn't fail. You don't know what's going to happen. They think they know, but they don't really know. It's in God's hands. That's
Thank you.
what I feel like.
Thank
It's
you very
in
much.
God's hands.
And if we can limit your comments to 3 minutes, that would be helpful, please.
I'll try.
Thank you.
My name's Candy DeRocher, and I live at 33 School Street here in Alton, have for the last 34 years. And one of my most frightening words that I heard tonight is that it could contaminate our water lines. What's their plan of action? What do they plan on doing if something happens? He's already talking about high metal contaminants they've already found. So, I mean, is it copper? Is it uranium? Is it arsenic? Is it nitrates? What is it? Do we really know? And if they're running out of money in December, well, too bad. Because when I called the state and I called Jean Shaheen, Kelly Ayotte's office back in April, and when I got told that that was going to be delayed April 2nd, they've had April, May, June, and July to work on this stuff, and here we are 3 weeks away from them doing it, and they still don't have answers. I'm sorry, but this is just a push through, just like we've had with other things. I mean, I've lived in South Carolina during the winter, and we had a small pond that went out in front of our golf course, and they took it down. We had dead fish, we had dead turtles, we had all the dead little bugs. There were no places for the birds to go anymore. The smell was so outrageous you couldn't even go outside. So I feel bad for those people that live along the river, because that's all you're gonna have is a mud flap with no ability to actually get onto that property. So him saying that, oh yeah, you might get an extra 2 feet of property, good luck getting out there. You're gonna sink up to your knees. So I'm sorry, but I think we need to know about our water plan and what's gonna happen with our water should it get more contaminated than it already is. I've dealt with the PFOAs down in Portsmouth, and I'm telling you, you don't want to have the situation happening here in Alton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Right behind you.
Someone's on their way.
Good evening. My name is Ray Bardwell, and I reside legally in Dover, and I'm looking to move to Alton. And I've been following the dam project for quite a while. To whom it may concern, I've been watching and talking about the Alton Power Dam and others, being Durham, Dover, and so forth, and Exeter, have been looking to purchase property along the Merrimack River, but no more. There are many reasons which are as follows, and along with my past letters to NHDES Dam Bureau. These are the reasons. Your property taxes, you've already talked about that. If you're on waterfront today and you're not next month, there's going to be a big thing. Is the state going to make up the difference in the lost revenue for the town? Another thing, water depths will vary, and there will be enough water depth of any type of small power boats, or is it just going to be kayaks, canoes, and rowboats? Another thing is, the biggest thing is the ecology. What's going to happen to all of the, and you know, the bugs, the turtles, and everything else that goes on up there. Another issue, with a loss in the water height, the groundwater level will lower in the aquifer, and this gentleman mentioned the aquifer. And how many here know that Lake Winnipesaukee used to drain through the Merrimack River, through to the Cocheco River, to the Atlantic Ocean, and not the way it goes now? And then the existing wells along with the properties there, that you have dug wells and so forth, they're going to dry up probably. This is the last detention pond, and that's been my contention. In Durham, they just took the dam out, but somebody said they were up to their waist with all the sediment that's in there. I grew up in Durham. We used to skate on that and have our parties and everything else. Now it's all gone. That's the last detention pond before it goes into the Great Bay Estuary. Pickpocket Dam in Exeter is going to be another one. The Bellamy River in Dover now. I live on the Bellamy River. And what's happened? Where the dam had the water impounded, you've got 4 to 6 feet wide, and you've just got a channel down through a big swamp. Good for the mosquitoes. This is the last detention pond or area above the river that flows into Lake Winnipesaukee, so future runoff with sediment will flow towards and into the lake. With a lowered water level, if so stated, there will be some sediment removal, but the final result stated is a complete dam removal. The big thing that I don't understand, why are some of the design criteria for dams changed? New Hampshire, from what I understand, is the only state that uses 1 in 1,000 year storm year design criteria. Let's consider other uses of the Alton Power Dam before it's changed. Give it to the town of Alton, help with its continued use, repair costs, and or back to hydropower again. This is the only state, I don't understand it. I watched out in Colorado, they increased the dam height by 100 feet for water resources and so forth. They didn't go through this. If you had to build another dam today to withstand a 1 in 1,000 year storms, you couldn't afford to do it. None of these dams. If we go back to the 1 in 100 year storm, would all these dams require minimal or a lot less construction costs? So, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Russell Weldon. I am outcrier from the lake here. I grew up on Alton Bay, Trask side, but then I defected over to Merry Meeting Lake. We're at the headwater of all of this storm. Merry Meeting Lake, firstly, how did we get here? The state had once, FEMA right now is a 100-year storm threshold, FEMA. A lot of that's for insurance and payouts. The second was that New Hampshire was 250-year storm threshold. How did we get from 250-year storm threshold to 1,000-year threshold? By fiat. The Department of Environmental Services, remember environmental services, the Department of Environmental Services arbitrarily chose 1,000 years. That's how we got here. And now that required every dam to be scrutinized, replaced, repaired, and at no budget. It never went through a process. Did the governor approve it? No. Did the Senate approve it? No. Did the Executive Council approve it? No. I don't think a lot of you knew that. So, We are now faced, in Mary Meeting, same thing that you're faced with. Let me tell you a few other things that happened. Mary Meeting Lake has pristine water, literally drinking water quality. #1 in the state, maybe with Newfound Lake, but if you go to Newfound Lake, they're building condos all over it. It's not gonna be long. So, our water left there, and then it went to, I think it was referred to by our state, that it went to industrial, you know, like Powder Mill, fish hatchery, industrial pollution or whatever. No, 50 years ago, the Powder Mill Fish Hatchery was polluting, was told by the EPA that it was exceeding pollution standards and nitrates going out of it, and it was then captured, as someone was just saying, in a couple of ponds. There's a wetlands above the Jones Dam, the Jones Pond. Then it went down to another dam, which is not in this, it's owned by the town of New Durham. More water was collected as sediment there. Then it left that dam and it went down and came down here to Alton, across Route 11, and then it came into Alton Bay. One of the reasons I'm not here now is because I saw the changes in what happened to Alton Bay. Has anybody here seen any changes in Alton Bay? The weeds, the nitrates have polluted Alton Bay, and in not many more years, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, it's a disaster in what they've done to Alton Bay. They're going to, now, what they want to do is take 8 billion gallons of water and flush it out of Mary Meeting Lake into Jones Pond after they've taken out that dam, and then down here and take out the Alton Dam. Where do you think all that pollution that was being done by the fish hatchery is going? It's going into Alton Bay. We need to get down to the real, you want to do something? Find out from your legislators, find out how does this happen? Maybe next time the state police want to make it safety issue that they could save a lot of lives if we could drop the speed limit to 40 miles an hour on the highway. Well, that's going to work out great. And I guess they don't need the governor or the executive council or the Congress or the Senate, you know, they don't need anybody. They don't need the reps. They don't need anybody to do whatever they seem to want to do.
Well, thank you. Your time, it's 3 minutes, but thank you very, very
Okay,
much.
you're welcome.
We want to be able to listen to everyone. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is James Atchison. I'm an Alton resident, and I'll start by saying I agree with everyone's sentiment in the room. I'll also say I recognize, Corey, that you're in a difficult position. That being said, I won't repeat anything that I've heard. What I will say is we need to be tactical if we want to stop this. In addition to being a resident, I'm also pretty good at AI. So in looking this up, it looks like what we can do tonight as a town council is file a formal demand for stay with the NHDES to create an administrative paper trail. And if they do not stop the drawdown, given that it does seem rushed, we do not have test results, we do not have a way to monitor the water supply, and we do not have a way to monitor the sediment as it's coming out. It's ridiculous. And I hear no contingency plan I hear no if in the test results. It's when we get the test results back, it's happening. And I hear we're running out of money, which tells me if we run out of money, run out of time, who's gonna fix this? Nobody. So if AI is correct and we can do a little more research, it looks like we need to file an injunction with file a letter with the Superior Court of Belknap County maybe, to make sure that this stops before September 2nd, and then we can all reevaluate it from there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
My name is Mark DeRoy. I live at 236 Henry Wilson Highway in Alton, right on the Merrimack River. I grew up in the town of Berwick, Maine, where we had a river that was like the Merry Meeting, where people could kayak, whitewater raft down the river, fish. People enjoyed that river. Then they got rid of the Mass Point Dam on the Salmon Falls River. That river went away. Now you have small pools of water, which are mosquito puddles, basically. And yet the people that live in that town still pay high taxes for waterfront property because for 2 weeks out of the year when the snow runs off, water runs through there. Other than that, there's weeds growing. It looks like garbage. It was once a beautiful river, and now nobody wants to live there. And I'm afraid that'll happen to this river. And when he says when you do the drawdown, we might lose 2 feet in the marsh area, well, there's not a lot of water there anyways. There's not a lot of current in that river. So if you drop that down like in the springtime, there's plenty of water for kayaking, but come summer when you don't get a lot of rain, there's times where I have a beach that goes into the river. I can't even go off my beach into the water. It's not deep enough to kayak. So if you drop it down more, there'll be no river. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I understand they need to take care of this stuff, but like this gentleman said, you need to think about it. You can't just say, hey, we're going to get rid of this because we need to get rid of 15 dams in this state, and Alton's a small town. So we're going to pick on them because they don't have the residents that bigger towns have. You know, to me, it's ridiculous.
Thank you very much.
It's quick. Janice Damaris, 17 Riverside Drive, Riverside. Just quick, can we get our own consultants? Can we get our own consultants to look into this stuff? Because we're just trusting what the state says. And can we get some legal advice and what our options are? That's all I really wanted to say. And to say thank you because it's clear to me how hard you're fighting for us, and it means everything to me, so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How you doing? Jim Parandes. I have a place over in, I got 3 acres over on the other side of 28. I'm doing a project right now. And you people, I've been a contractor in the Lakes region for 42 years. Like countless shoreland permits. And I got a shoreland permit going over there right now. And now, it's about 2 feet all the way out to the main channel out there, probably.
Can you pull the mic a little further closer?
Probably about 400 yards out. My question is this, so what happens with the shoreland permit? I mean, after you guys destroy the whole ecosystem, which you will, and obviously it's not about wildlife or anything because you guys don't care about that. Otherwise, there'd be other routes here, it's all money. After you destroy the ecosystem and that turns to a mud flap, what happens to, you know, how do I go about with the shoreline permit? Does that go null and void, or can I cut all the trees? I mean, you people are making me report right now for the next 2 years vegetation growth because I'm so close to the water. You guys are draining the water. You have an answer to that? Any response?
So my response is, I don't work in the shoreline program, so I don't know what the answer that they would have.
Is the shoreline permit the environmental services?
Correct.
You have no answers on how that's going to work with not just my project, but other projects around that area up and coming?
Jim, we can't be asking questions of them. This is public input.
Okay.
At this point.
Well, do you, I mean, it's a real issue.
Yes.
And nobody seems to have answers. And then the other issue is, once that becomes dry land, which it obviously will, how are you guys going to address the issue of whose property it becomes? Because the last guy I talked to said that becomes the abutter's property, but how are the new lines drawn? How's that tax, you know, how do the taxes go up even though the water, you know, some people are gonna lose property value because, you know, over near the fire station and everything, that's gonna go away. So those people are basically gonna be sitting on a swamp, a dry swamp. For me, there's gonna be a little creek out there. You know, I don't know how is that all gonna be addressed? And how is the shoreline gonna be addressed? I mean, do I still have to abide by the rules? I'm not 50 feet anymore. How's that work? Does anybody have the answers to that? I mean, I think these are the things that need to be worked out. And, you know.
Good questions.
I think I get that this whole meeting is moot. It seems to be going forward regardless. And it's not your guys' fault, it's the state. But maybe there's something we can do to at least delay the full
Yes.
drawdown. It just, none of it makes sense to me, so.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm Ron Rogers. I live on the Mill Pond, Letter S Road. And if he draws down 2.5 feet, that's probably going to end putting water into the mill pond. And right now you have the Alton grammar school goes down there every single day with a class or two to do fishing and that. You have all kinds of kayaking and all that. And if they dig down 2.5 feet, there's not going to be any water going in through the culverts. And if you have no water going in through the culverts, unless it's spring fed, which it may be, I don't know if it is or not, it's going to dry up through evaporation and everything else. Just like that floating island a couple years ago, just picked up and floated to the shore by the fire department. Everything I read about this, it sounds like it's a done deal. And it sounds also to me that if you're worried about a 1,000-year flood, then why in the hell doesn't the town take over the dam? And if you're worried about the weather, go down and pull a few boards out, which is the same thing they're talking about doing, only permanently. And that way you could put them back after the storm and bring it back to where the level should be for the impact on everybody's homes, wells, and recreation. As it is, I'll lose property value, which I understand everybody will. I'll also probably lose my well, even though it's a drilled well, and he says it has no effect. The bottom of my well, probably 10 to 12 feet, is sludge. And once this water goes down, that sludge is going to raise. And so, like I say, I think the only logical explanation is for the town just to try to take it over, handle the water level itself in cases of storm and this and that. And I don't see any other way around it because they've already got what they're going to do and they're not going to stop doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bruce Holmes. I live on Suncook Valley Road. I did a paper up on items that I thought were of interest and should be looked at and studied on this whole thing. I made enough copies for all of you.
We have them.
You have them?
And we've been looking
Okay,
at
I
them.
did send it over today. But if anybody here wants them, I have them for them. I think your course of action is to get a hold of the town attorney, ask him to file a lawsuit against the state. You have reason. And get this project stopped. If you stop it for a period of a year, spend some time and study what everybody's been concerned about, and there's even more. There's a lot of stuff they haven't thought of. But I'd just like you to do it tonight. Don't wait. You only got 2 or 3 weeks, and you got to get before a judge. And just stop it for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Courtney?
Courtney Mitchell again. So given the proximity of the public water supply to the wells, and the 3 water lines that go underneath the river at different depths, my job as superintendent, I'm constantly faced with emails about emerging contaminants that are coming down the line that we need to start monitoring, things that not necessarily are being tested for right now. The fact that you're saying that you are noticing different types of metals, I would be very interested in seeing those results. My biggest thing is that I think the state needs to consider establishing a contingency fund for the town of Alton, or another financial assurance in the event that the drawdown impacts our wells. Not during the drawdown, not a year after the drawdown, but many years after the drawdown, because that's how we have to plan. We do not have the money as a water system or a town to keep spinning our wheels and spending money on certain things because other people aren't maintaining what they need to maintain. Water rolls downhill, and so does in other things. And we shouldn't be picking up the mess and spending our money with our hands in the air trying to figure out how to pay for it. The issue of fire protection. We have a 250,000 gallon storage tank up on the hill that has needed replacement for many years. The state and a bunch of other consultants sat in a room with me and told me that there was no money because we didn't qualify for it. Fire protection is not being met. Our ISO ratings are very minimal. And they came up with the evaluation of the tank that we need 830,000 gallons of storage to be able to fight a fire in the town of Alton. Now we're gonna tie more dry hydrants and expand our fire protection services to other areas of town, which we can't do right now. So I would like, at least for the board, to really pressure the state into coming up with some sort of financial assurance for us to protect us down the line, because we do plan, and we do maintain. The biggest thing that stuck out to me today is that you all do your safety inspections every 2 years. So do I. I have a sanitary survey every 3 years. I inspect my tank every 5 years. Where are your maintenance records? Because that's where everything fell short. Who's operating the valves downstream? Who's operating the valves upstream? That's what sounds to me that failed, and now we need to get rid of it. I don't have the luxury to just get rid of my water mains when they don't function properly anymore. I don't just pack up and go home. So you need to understand where the town is coming from. We have hundreds, 15,000 people that come to this town in the summertime relying on safe drinking water. So we need to protect that as well. So I think we need some assurance from the state that down the line, if one of our water wells gets impacted with some sort of emerging contaminant or goes dry, that we have a plan and we have money to do that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good evening. I'm Don White. My family owns the Merry Meeting River Mobile Home Park. First, thank you all for all your concerns, and you all seem to be fighting for us, so thank you. That's a big deal. I mentioned it the last time the gentleman was here. He seemed disinterested in it, and then what I'm hearing tonight, my hearing's not always the best, so sometimes I hear things that are not what they were said. So if I'm making a mistake, please correct me. he refers to the marsh as being below 28. The marsh is above 28. It is, the Fish and Game has it as a wildlife protected area, management area, excuse me. It's for waterfowl. Our property and our neighbors, when I researched our property lines, the owner of the dam has flowage rights on our property. And everybody else is along there, up to, I believe it's 526 feet elevation. I believe it's the same elevation as the dam. That goes back to when the dam was rebuilt from Wentworth Dam and used as a power. I feel like I'm missing something somewhere. There's not going to be any testing on that, the marsh, the water. I've always said one of the greatest things about it is nobody knows it's there. The worst thing about it is nobody knows it's there. The habitat, the wildlife that comes in and out, how it changes in the seasons, it's unreal. There is, I would, because we put docks in, I'm going to guess there's somewhere between a foot or two of sediment sitting on the bottom of that river by us. They take the dam out, and they're not going to check to see or take care of what's up there. Don't get me wrong, I don't want the dam out. I'm totally 110% against it. What happens to that material? I don't know that it's metals or anything else, I'm not saying that, but the plant life that grows in the marsh right now, if you go look at it, is all full of lily pads and flowers and such. They'll go down and there will be clear water and you'll see the bottom, but where does that sediment go? And they're not going to test any of that. They're not looking into it. I think you have concerns justified for it's being rushed. My
Thank you
time's up.
very much for your
So,
time.
thank you.
Brock Mitchell, Kentlock Circle. I just kind of have a statement, and this might be out of reach a little bit, but it seems as though the conversation that you just had up here is that you're coming to the end of the year and you're going to lose your funding as far as what's the money that was available through ARPA funds and whatnot. So my question would be, is you guys aren't cramming this through, because at the end of this in December 2026, all the money that wasn't spent has to go back to the federal government. You have to pay them back. And my sneaking suspicion is the money isn't there. So you're using the dams to cover up all, and I'm not, it is what it is. I know you're not, you're just the guy here doing, but is this just a ploy to say, okay, we're gonna drain the dam down and we can send a bill in and say, hey, we spent this money on covering up this dam and doing all, I just don't wanna see that. It kinda, the way this is getting crammed down everybody's throat, I've been doing this public works for a very long time, and I've seen a lot of stuff go up and down, but it seems to me that this is just getting rammed down our throats, and there's no real paperwork or paper trail or anything saying this is what's happening, this is why we're doing it. It's just all these small dams gotta go. And I think if we can postpone this for a little while, their money, no offense to you, like I said, their money goes away. And this project goes the way of the west side, and it's forgot about. But it just seems like this happened so fast and it's trying to get pushed through that there's ulterior motives here. And, I mean, that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much.
Hope she come.
Hi, I'm Beth Nato-Doroy. I live with him. So I wanted to go back and say, I just kayaked down by your way. It was beautiful. Secondly, whoever just talked about that, you did right, contracts. That's exactly how it works. I worked in contracts with the federal government, right? They fund it. If you don't use it, you lose it. It goes back, and your funding for the next year gets cut because you're like, oh, I didn't need that money. That's how that works. So just that is true how those contracts work. So I would just say that's part of the draw for this, and we just need to make sure that we're not letting that drive our ability to just say we just have to stop it, because that's kind of the game that gets played. And the river, it's beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Richard Finethy. I live on Old New Durham Road, not even on the river. After listening to some of the stuff that was brought up, I had questions that I probably won't get answered, but I'd like to just put them out there. What is the reason we're doing this? Is it because it's a bad dam, or is it because the state screwed up and polluted the river? Is there a cover-up that way? That was a question I had. We're talking about the dams were bad, the dams are bad, they're gonna fall down. And now we're doing this for testing for metals and testing for this and testing for that. Is that, what is the motivation behind this whole project? The truth.
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any, the town's talked about taking it over. Are there any funds, federal funds for hydro projects? This was originally a hydro project to start with. The power companies decided they weren't making enough money with it. Technology's come a lot further. When they decided they weren't doing it, it was an old-fashioned 1920, whatever it was. Technology's a lot faster. Was there any studies done on that? I asked that in a meeting prior to this, and there were no numbers. There were a lot of numbers about tearing it down and rehabbing and everything else, but there were no numbers in that. All I got was an answer of, well, we talked to some guy. So I'd like to see something on that. Hydrants. Let's talk about hydrants real quick. If you're not within a mile of a hydrant, your insurance rates go up a lot. I had just found this out after my insurance rates were up. I'm 2.5 miles from an Alton hydrant. I'm less than a mile from a New Durham hydrant, where we have mutual aid. I contacted my insurance company. They contacted the fire department, and my insurance went down. If we drain this river and all these dry hydrants aren't accessible, everybody's gonna pay more insurance. And it's $300 or $400 a year difference. It's not like 50 bucks, okay? They said they didn't have to, you had to have water rights. If you do something on the water, you have to get permits for it. Did the fire department just say, hey, I'm gonna dig a hole and stick a pipe in the water? I have waterfront property. If I wanna cut a tree, I gotta go to the state. If I wanna move a rock, I gotta go to the state. I had to get permission from the state to do this. Do the fire departments have to have permission to put these in? One would assume yes. Don't know for sure, it's just an assumption. And would that not constitute, by them giving you that permission, rights to that water? Where he says towns don't have water rights. Just by giving that permission, would that constitute the permission of using that water? Question.
Thank you, Rick.
Got a couple more, but my 3 minutes is up.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any comments?
Jill Hauser, Gilman Corner Road, going for under 90 seconds. I believe the ARPA funds expire at the end of this year, and that is the very last of them, and contracts need to be signed and completed by the end of September. So I think this probably really is the end of that funding cycle. But mostly I'm here to thank Mr. Shea for the communication efforts he continues to make with the town, for thank whoever came to you with all these signs popping up around the roads are really quite unattractive, and dealing with that has been nice to see. thank you for the work you've done on the swap shop. It's been a fantastic year at the swap shop, a lot of fun, a lot of stuff going around. So for all of you, I just want to thank you, and I really appreciate the listening and the working, and I'm looking forward to the day when there's a really clear conduit to how to communicate with the Board of Selectmen. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Corey Clark, Chief Engineer at NHDES Dam Bureau. I just want to say thank you to the board. Thank you to everybody who spoke tonight. Certainly was taking notes throughout all the comment period. I'll be in touch with the board moving forward before September 2nd, testing results, where things are, where we're seeing things. And I certainly encourage anybody else to reach out if they have any further questions that, you know, they feel like they want to be able to get answered based on tonight's discussion. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else over here. I would like to say that we're fortunate enough this evening to have a member, Executive Counselor Joe Kenny, if possibly he would come up and have any comments. Would be deeply appreciated by the town of Alton. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you. I've been in a lot of cantankerous, frictious public hearings, and I just want to compliment the citizens of Alton and our state employee, Corey Clark, and the Board of Selectmen for conducting yourself in a civil manner and really kind of getting to the heart of what discussion is all about, which is how do you keep the dams in place, repair them, meet all the environmental concerns and infrastructure specification, and making sure that Alton looks as beautiful as it always has. I can say I want to thank the White family who brought me up and down the river the other day to take a look at all the dams all the way into New Durham, and I spent the whole better of the afternoon just kind of walking around saying, when you go to Route 11, you don't realize what's behind Route 11. You think the forests are there, but it's really a river. It's a Mary Meeting Lake River that is quite spectacular. And you understand that Fish and Game has a lot of control and a lot of oversight. I will say at the Mary Meeting Lake, they need to work on their boat ramp launch area. They could do some improvements there. That's something I'll run by them. And much like we've got a history from Corey on dams in general in New Hampshire, what they were used for at one point, and how they were relinquished and how they were left to the state and towns, that has been problematic. One of the things that I've identified in the state of New Hampshire, in 1986, we created the 10-year highway plan process for all our roads and bridges. That's infrastructure. We didn't do it for dams. We really should have. We should have created, red listed, kind of dam program, and that we appropriated money accordingly based off of priorities of the dam. And that's something that we really need to take a look at. We also know there's $400 million in liability in our high hazard dams in New Hampshire today. The state, and I'm going to pick on the legislature, has not really addressed it. They've addressed it like we're waiting for the car wreck at the intersection before we put maybe a roundabout or some other safety measures. But I think we as a state really need to look hard. If you look at Murphy Dam, which we were up there last year taking a tour with Governor and Council, that has to be replaced at $30 million. We have a state men's prison that we have to look at a new one, which could cost anywhere from $600 to $800 million, which would be our largest capital project in the state's history. The state has in front of it a lot of infrastructure demands and needs, and we've got to get creative in how we can support that. Now, the gentleman mentioned something about this 1,000-year, kind of, I don't know, design for infrastructure. That probably was done through JELCAR, the Joint Legislative Rules Committee. He's right, Russ is right when he said the legislature didn't, the governor didn't do it, the governor and council didn't do it. When the Joint Legislative Committee meets both in the Senate and the House, they have representation there. When they pass agency rules, in essence, it takes the effect of law. So if you want to undo that particular approach, you would have to go back to Jelcar. Did I miss something?
That's in Belfry, yep. Be all right.
Okay, all right.
He'll settle down.
I don't know if that was a
He
cosmic,
came from the bell tower. Yeah.
cosmic meeting or
Somebody
something.
left the door open.
But you let me know when I need to leave the stage. But I'm here to support the town of Alton. I'm here to make sure that the state is a good partner and that I'm here to help referee. I think what I always tell people in general, he's more popular than I am right now, but we're all the same. Whether you're local government, county government, state government, federal government, we're all the same. And we have to realize we're taxpayers and we're just trying to do the right thing. So my commitment to the town of Alton is I will work with the Board of Selectmen, I will work with, the State Dam Bureau and the DES Commissioner, Robert Scott, to do what's right for the people of Alton. That's really the bottom line, okay? If people know my reputation, and, you look at Loon Island a few years ago up in Ossipee, where the townspeople and the lakes people were really at each other with DES, and the deputy commissioner said, I can remember this, and he was a young fellow at the time. He said, well, we didn't have to have a public hearing tonight. And I looked right at him, I said, oh, Mr. Deputy Commissioner, yes, you needed to have a public hearing tonight because people had concerns. I know there's a lot of concerns in Alton. The emails, the newspapers, the discussion in the streets, there's a lot of concerns about the dams, and rightly so. So my commitment is my office will continue to work with the town, come up with a solution. We'll all walk away hopefully feeling better for ourselves. We're not always going to agree on everything. I hope we don't do any lawsuits. That's just going to waste money. Let's just work together and get it right. As far as the upper money goes, yeah, it goes back to the federal government. And we had $17 million here recently, Stratford County Nursing Home Project. They couldn't put it together or agree on a program of what to do about a nursing home. It went right back to the state. It got repurposed and it went out back into the state. So I wouldn't rush your decisions based off you're going to lose this funding. Do what's right for Alton, do what's right for the testing and for the people involved. So I've never, we a lot of times at the governor and council meeting have the gun to our head by commissioners who say, oh, you got to pass it today, or something else is, the world's going to blow up. And that's the worst thing you need to do, the governor and council, because we always push back and say, no, we're going to table it. We'll see you in 2 weeks from now. We're going to find out more information. That's exactly what you need to do, is table it, get more information, and make the right decisions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Constable.
Any other public input? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public input at this time. No appointments this evening?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No new business this evening? Oh, we gotta make a decision.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What?
Thought we skipped old business.
No.
But
No.
No, we're good.
No. I can skip it.
She jumped the gun.
Okay. Going back to old business, with the IT purchase. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, on the table you had, there's a memorandum from our IT director. You had sent him back to get 2 more quotes.
Yes.
And to explore his original request for $60,000 out of the capital reserve. He has gotten 2 more quotes and also explored our options for purchasing direct. He has come up with a solution that is $10,000 less than his ask. originally.
Okay.
SHI came back with a quote of 53,000 and some change, but he also discovered that purchasing the Surface Pro, there's 3 of them for $3,370 each. He can get those down direct to a roughly $2,400 each, almost $1,000 savings. And by picking and choosing what he could get direct at a deal that was better than our vendors' contracts, he pulled those out of the quote to get creative and reduce the overall ask to 50,000 versus his original 60,000. So what he is asking, if the board is so inclined, if they would approve a withdrawal from the IT capital reserve in the amount not to exceed $50,000 to make the purchase through a combination of SHI's quote and purchasing through Microsoft Direct customer purchasing.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate him doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It was
needed to be
fruitful.
done.
It was
It
fruitful.
needed to be done.
Good.
Yeah.
So down $10,000, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the IT department's expenditure for up to $50,000 from the IT capital reserve through the purchases of SHI and through Microsoft Direct Consumer Purchasing for the scheduled Microsoft Surface Pro kits, Dell Pro rugged laptop, Dell Pro microsystems, and the 2 laptops for flexible use.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I think we just need to applaud Josh and Ryan for the extra effort that represent a substantial savings
Yes.
for the taxpayer.
Absolutely does. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passed. Okay, going into administrator's report.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of announcements and one request that was brought to me. First of all, there was a request that there is going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony for Vacanza Properties at the new Sandy Point. It's going to be August 14th, which is Friday from 1 to 4. Everybody has been invited, should you be able to attend the ribbon cutting over there. I will tell you, I have a conflict on Friday. I will not be able to attend, but certainly the invitation was board-wide. Plus letting the public know that there's going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony on Friday from 1 to 4, and everybody is welcome. Same thing, there is, we were notified by the Forest Society that there's going to be a presentation at the library on Thursday, August 13th. That is going to be from 5 to 6:30 p.m. It is to go over their recent survey results in regards to the Mount Major Visitor Use Survey that they took last summer and fall, excuse me. So they're going to go over those results during that meeting. Again, an invitation had been extended to staff members, the Board of Selectmen, and emergency services representatives at both the fire and police. DPW, I believe, received it as well. So again, that was an open invitation on Thursday night. And then the last thing I have for the board is sort of, this was brought to me as a request, an email request for the board, and I'm not sure exactly where we want to go, what direction the board chooses to go with it. So we did hear a presentation from Epic Seaplanes about that. He had subsequently followed up with an email requesting written permission from the board to apply for a DES dock permit. And I wasn't quite sure after that presentation where the board left off and whether we were at that stage or
We're not at that stage.
No, I agree. We're not at that stage.
We're not at that stage. He needs to go to go through the process of a warrant article and go out to the
Public
town.
hearing.
Now, I don't know if he has to get the DES approval first, which I don't think he does. I think he needs to have approval from the townspeople, the town first, and then he can apply for the DES. So, in my opinion, that would be a no.
Yeah, I think this is jumping the gun.
Okay.
How,
Well, the consensus?
Consensus.
The same
I
down
agree.
there?
I think there were many voices in the town that were not
Yeah.
ecstatic about this.
no, I think it needs to go to the people.
So if I'm hearing the consensus correctly, just correct me if I'm wrong, I will respond to Mr. Wood and just to notify him that he needs to proceed with a petition article and approval from the town before we proceed
Correct.
with anything else.
Correct.
To that,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
I will do so.
Thank you.
That is all I have, gentlemen.
Very good, thank you. Selectmen reports. Jack?
The planning board has not met since our last meeting. I have nothing to update.
Okay, thank you. Dick?
Yeah, we're ready to go with the milfoil awards for this year. Swap Shop seems to be doing very well. I'm sorry I missed through my own stupidity, the CIP meeting they had last night. I'm glad to see that's getting rolling. And I guess they have another one the end of the month that I should be able to attend as the alternate. And I think that I'm seeing some results from the Public Works Department's efforts on sign removals.
Yes.
I've seen some telephone poles that I haven't seen for years. So
we've been
that's a good
talking about it,
sign. And I appreciate those efforts. I'm sure that'll be an endless battle, but it does help make the town look a little prettier.
Certainly does.
Yeah, on that note, I saw a posting in Facebook, somebody had noted that the DPW is taking down all political signs as well as the advertising signs.
If they're where they're not supposed to be, so there is language in one of the RSA that
Yes.
off the top of my head, and I apologize, that outlines where they can and can't be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. All right.
And they are at the DPW if they want to retrieve them.
They're at the DPW to pick up. Right. And you'll keep them for a period of 2 weeks?
We're gonna keep those until, I believe it's a week after the election.
After the election? No, I'm talking about the other signs in general.
We're keeping those for 30 days.
30 days, okay. Thank you.
And I have nothing to report on, we haven't met, we're supposed to meet Thursday
Okay.
for conservation, sorry, clarify that.
Okay. The ZBA met on August 6th. We had some cases that we had to continue on a variance and special exceptions. And we approved 2 cases which had various special exceptions and variances that we also approved. I also would like to mention that one of our long-term ZBA members has recently resigned, Tim Morgan. Hate to see him go. He's been a fabulous asset and fabulous person to have on the ZBA for almost the last 20 years. He's done a marvelous job. We hate to see him go. He just needs to move on. After all these years of service, I just really wanted to stress the fact that the town is gonna really miss him because he's done a great job over the years with the zoning, and he was also on the planning board for 5 years. So he did a great job. Thank you very much to him. We're also gonna have the Alton Water Bandstand Water Ski Show, which is coming up on August 22nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the rain date for that would be the 23rd. And that's all I have right now. So we'll go to the approval of the minutes. We are not going to approve, we took that off, July 28, 2026 public session, but we are looking to approve the July 28, 2026 non-public session.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 28, 2026 non-public session meeting minutes as written.
I'll second that one.
Any,
Keeping them sealed.
and keeping it sealed?
And keeping it sealed, yes.
Thank you. And we have a second? Jack?
Yes, I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent agenda? There is not one this evening. Okay, no discretionary appointments? And public input for any government or town business.
Me again. Richard Finnerty. I don't mean to pick on you, but it just came up.
Picking on,
Everybody.
oh, all of us, okay.
As a body. I just, with the stuff that goes on in town with like Hidden Springs and all that stuff, I just thought it was very humorous to hear you guys talk about getting stuff shoved down your throats and all the rest of this stuff. It was almost comical to listen to it. Your comments. Just that's my personal opinion. That's all. That's all I got.
Okay,
Short and sweet.
it's your opinion. You're entitled to it.
Thanks.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. We're not answering questions if you have public input. Come on up. If you have public input that you want to share with us?
Sure, my name is James Atchison, and having sat in this room for a little while, I can tell you that the public consensus is that they would like to see some action taken by this Selectmen's Committee at some point after this meeting, hopefully immediately, and have that communicated, because everybody walked out and nobody has any idea what's going to happen next. And there's a lot of reason for concern, and I think that you guys all share the concern, and of course, us residents are biased to keeping things as they are, but things do seem rushed, and it seems very dangerous to allow this to go through, literally. We're not impacted directly, we're on the river, but we're further down, and we're just concerned about the drinking water, we're concerned about everything else and the downstream consequences, so we're not saying that it should never happen, it should never be drained, but September 2nd seems a little ridiculous, given that there's nothing in the works to actually monitor the stuff, to monitor it in real time, to stop it if it's happening, to fix it if it gets broken. So, and in addition, I would volunteer to assist in any way possible. I can help to draft any letters if you want to contact a court, or if the state attorney needs any assistance in drafting language. I'm not an attorney, but I'm a good writer. I'm happy to assist and make this as little impact on the town's budget as possible.
Absolutely. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your input earlier. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bree Rossiter. I am the Associate Director of the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance. I am also a resident of Alton and a member of the Conservation Commission, just for full disclosure. I'm requesting that the results that you're provided from the Department of Environmental Services is sent to the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance for review. For background information, we run the entire water quality monitoring program on Lake Winnipesaukee, including Alton Bay, with the assistance of the Conservation Commission and other volunteers. So we have plenty of experience in reviewing water quality monitoring results and have relationships with other experts that could assist. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bree.
Okay, any other input? Seeing none, we'll close the public input, and I make a motion to enter into non-public meeting per RSA 91-A:3(2) under A.
I'll second that.
And,
Jack Sleeper, yes.
Richard Shea, yes.
Drew Carter, yes.
Paul LaRochelle, yes. Thank you very much.